Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll get started in just 1 second. Make sure that you are using the sign-in link in the chat if you haven't already to sign in for today. We want to make sure that you get your sketch hour. You can also use the QR code on the screen. But we're so glad that you're here. Thanks for joining us. All right. Well, again, thanks for being here. Welcome to Reimagining Possibilities, Restoring Imagination and Nurturing Creativity. This is day 2 of a 3-day series. Day 3 will be next Wednesday at the same time. So if you haven't registered for that yet, you've liked what you've seen the first 2 days, come on back. We'll do some quick introductions and then jump in to our session today. My name is Jeff Austin. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a literacy consultant at Wayne Risa. Laura, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Gabrion. I'm also a literacy consultant at Wayne Risa.
And my co-pilot today, we're doing this together. Dr. Rosalyn Shahid, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Rosalyn Shahid. I am also a literacy consultant here at Wayne Risa. We are so pleased to have you.
And then the fourth member of our team is Jennifer Snapp. She couldn't be here today, but you'll be seeing Jennifer next week in this space. But we're happy to have her thinking and her brilliance along with us today.
So we want to start by adding a land and labor acknowledgement that was actually crafted by Healing by Choice, a woman and non-gender conforming organization that promotes and prioritizes healing. We begin by honoring the ancestral land on which we live. We are the Anishinaabe Aki, the indigenous land of the Anishinaabe people of the Three Fires, which are comprised of the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. We are still here. Detroit is the largest Black majority city in the nation, with a long legacy of African diasporic global contributions, which was once one of the last stops on the Underground Railroad, known by its code name Midnight. Detroit is also the U.S. city with the largest concentration of Arab Americans, a border city with historic and growing Latino communities, and a legacy of Asian American communities and movements. We acknowledge this land, its history, and all the beings seen and unseen, known and unknown. As we step into this work today on this land as uninvited guests, we offer this work in the spirit of reparation, devoting ourselves to justice as we strive to uplift the legacy of this land. So thank you for that. So we'll get started right away with just a peek at our agenda. We really have a double-tracked agenda today. So the pieces on our slide here that talk about, we'll do a little bit of a connector. We'll go back to that idea of emergent strategy and radical freedom dreaming, what we think about that, how we were positioning it the last time we met, and how we're evolving in our thinking using emergent strategy, right? We'll take a closer look at the disciplinary literacy essentials, and we'll zoom in on this idea of inquiry-based community connections and the practice and the essential practices. And we'll do that by thinking about what is place-based. What is place-based education? And we'll do that through a writing activity. And we'll have an opportunity for continued learning. So as you're engaging with us today, we really, really want you, and this is the second piece that isn't stated on the agenda, we want you to be thinking about how does this work fit in your respective communities, right? When we do culturally responsive work, when we do authentic work, when we do liberatory work, it reaches the classroom. And so that is our purpose today, is to reach your hearts, your minds, so that you can in turn support students in robust and meaningful ways this school year. So here are our working agreements. I'll give you a moment to kind of look those over. And as you are looking those over, just choose one of the working agreements to focus on today. Then go ahead and put the number of that agreement that you want to personally focus on into the chat. Number 1 is demonstrate a mutual respect. Number 2, take a learner's stance. I think that is what I really want to focus on today, taking a learner stance. Jeff and I and Laura, I can definitely say we all learn so much by being in community with teachers like you. And so today, how we've crafted our work today, we will have opportunities to share what is already happening in your classroom spaces. So that is one that I want to take. Number 3 is employ skillful listening. 4, engage in humble inquiry. I see my friend, she chooses that one. Engage in humble inquiry, which is a beautiful one. And then number 5 is expect and accept non-closure. So I see, yes, I see the gamut here, number 2s, 3s, and 4s. Thank you for that. So we'll keep that idea, that working agreement with us as we go throughout today's session. So as promised, right, I shared last time we worked together, I'm so grateful for my colleague, Jeff Austin. He always pushes us. And one of the beautiful pieces that he brought to our literacy team this year is the work of Adrienne Marie Brown, who actually has crafted a book called Emergent Strategy. So we encourage you to seek out her book. But one piece of that book are these practices, right? And so these practices are really what is guiding our work, not just in the session, but our work in life. I actually have written down these strategies and I carry them with me. They are just beautiful reminders of why we're here, why we continue to do this work as educators. And sometimes it takes a concrete reminder to keep us kind of pushing and moving forward. So there are 9 emergent strategies. I'll read them briefly because I know this is also being recorded, although I know you can read on your own. But what we want for you to do is choose one. You chose one last time, and maybe you'll stick with that one. But now we want to concretize, right? So if this particular principle or strategy is kind of is resonating with you, so how will that show up in the classroom? Because that's where we do our transformative work, right? So the first idea here is small is good, small is all. The large is a reflection of the small. How I think like that is so succinct, but so profound, right? Change is constant. Be like water is number 2. There is always enough time for the right work. Today, as we were planning, actually a few days ago when we were planning this session, we were debating on how much time we should spend on a particular portion of the day. And we decided, let's play the entire clip because that is where the important pieces lie. And if we truncate that, we're doing a disservice to you and possibly to the students that you'll support, right? So that is a concrete way that we are enacting this idea. Number 4, there is a conversation in the room that only these people at this moment can have. Find it. You are the people. You are the people who have come today. Number 5, never a failure, always a lesson. I love that one. Trust people. If you trust the people, they become trustworthy. So you can add in children. You can add in families. You can add in community. If you trust the people, they become trustworthy. Number 7, move at the speed of trust. Focus on critical connections more than critical mass. Build the resilience of building relationships. Number 8, less prep, more presence. And number 9, what we pay attention to grows. So here's our ask of you. Yes, thank you, Tamika. She says Nelson Mandela stated something similar to number 5. I think you are right. Never a failure, always a lesson. So what we're asking you to do is to play a little bit with this concretizing, right? Taking this concept and making it concrete. So what would it look like in the classroom? So our example is, if you believe, or I believe, small is good, small is all, so I must, so we're filling in the blank. So I must make it a priority to get to know my students personally and academically. So find that one idea from these emergent strategies, and then add, if you believe this, what do you have to do? What must you do in your classroom? And that's what we're asking you to add into the chat. So I'm going to stop talking so you can have a moment to kind of think. And when you're ready, just go ahead and add that idea into the chat. So choose a principle and then add a concrete idea on the tail end of that. Oh, these are beautiful so far. Tamika writes, change is constant. Always be willing to do what is best for students at the time, even if it isn't what you had planned. Yes, thank you for that. Absolutely. Kelly writes, I really like number 9. I have applied it to raising my daughter and combined it with number 8. Yes, thank you. You're connecting this to your household, which is really beautiful, right? I believe that change is constant, so I must be able to adjust accordingly without freaking out. Yes, yes, yes. This is true. This is true. I believe that change is constant, so I must be willing to be flexible and open to changing my plans. Please keep those coming, because we know sometimes the act of writing something, right, also solidifies it for ourselves. It makes it real. So I love these. Jeff, I welcome you or Laura to read a few more if you're able.
Sure. Never a failure, always a lesson will encourage my students to always try. Trying is learning also. And I believe that never a failure, always a lesson. So I must help my students find that lesson.
Read that one again, Laura. That was beautiful.
I believe that never a failure, always a lesson. So I must help my students find that lesson.
Who trying to make me cry today? I love it. Thank you.
And then I believe that what we pay attention to grows, so I must choose the areas of literacy for my tier 3 reading students need the most to be able to cultivate their skills.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for all of those. So what we're moving to next, I think really kind of elevates this idea of small is good, small is all. We have these disciplinary literacy practices, right? And in these practices, there are 10 core practices that go across content areas. I'm going to date myself. Some of you may remember the GLICs and the HISSES. There were over 190, right? And I know now with Common Core, we also have these 10 standards. So I think with our research, we found out that when people can do a few things really well, we have much better outcomes. And so one of the things that we are positioning today's conversation on is this document, this disciplinary essentials document, which is really an outgrowth of the literacy lawsuit that happened in Detroit, which was brought to the Michigan Supreme Court by Black boys advocating for their right to literacy. So these 10 essential pieces are more than just simply a document, right? They have a history. They have advocacy written all over them, and they are really a direct result of a justice orientation. And so when we look at these essential practices, right, we know that all 10 are really important. But what we've decided to focus on is what we believe is foundational to the entire document, which is, if you go to the next slide, the entire time that we were together, the last time we were together, we focused on what we're calling problem-based instruction. This problem-based instruction, which is practice number 1, and it's number 1 for a reason, it provides an opportunity for us to do all the other practices. This is foundational to how you set up your classroom this year. And we believe, Laura believes, Jeff believes, Jennifer, who is here in spirit, believes that in order for kids to have truly joyful and meaningful opportunities into the classroom, they must have a purpose for their learning. And we must set it very clearly what the purpose for their learning is. And so one of the ways that you do that is through problem-based and inquiry-based instruction. So it's really foundational, right? And when we think of a foundation, if the foundation is shaky, everything comes tumbling down. And so when we set a goal and our foundation is based on something that is meaningful to students, it is interactive, it's framed through our authentic problems that are connected to their lived experiences, to their communities. When we read and write with that purpose in mind, we have built a stronger foundation to do all the other things, some of the skills that were lifted earlier, to provide opportunities for writing tasks and reading tasks, and to bring in diverse pieces, right? So when we think about problem-based, that is our goal. We want to develop and implement interactive problem-based units of instruction that frame authentic problems to help establish purposes for students to read, write, and communicate beyond being assigned or expected to do so, for their enjoyment, for their interest, to answer and ask abstract questions, authentic questions, to talk about their communities and to address the needs in their communities and beyond, and to communicate with a specific audience and a specific purpose. So now what I want to show you just very quickly as a review, some of the pieces that we lifted out when we're thinking about this inquiry and problem-based learning. We lifted out some big ideas. The first is, when we do this well, we're always engaging students in developing and asking questions. So we're going to talk a little bit today about, so what does that mean to help them develop that as a skill? That is a skill. We want for students to think about helping students to make connections to their lives by reading and engaging in real world and issue-based investigations. I think we do a lot with the real world, but the issue-based pieces is what we're going to toggle in today. And Jeff is going to share some work that we've done with students this summer that we found very successful, very rewarding working with students. And the final piece, 2 pieces, is that when we create problem-based units of study, we create opportunities to enact literate identities for students. Many students do not see themselves as literate beings. So we need to disrupt that thinking, and we need to make sure that all students feel autonomous. All students feel that their literate identities, their academic identities matter, right? And last but not least, we just want to elevate out that it also offers regular opportunities for students to collaborate with their peers. I know sometimes that's hard, but we really need them to provide spaces to talk to one another, to talk with us. We were blessed that the project that Jeff will describe in more detail, we were working with students and teachers co-creating units of study. So really we're honoring the student voice here. And so we have some opportunities for small group discussions and group projects and such. So those are some big ideas about the problem-based. And so why are we focusing on this, right? We found this quote from Bettina Love, and I think it captures it perfectly. And she says, pedagogy should work in tandem with students' own knowledge of their community and grassroots organizations to push for new ideas for social change, not to be a tool to enhance test scores or grades. Pedagogy, regardless of its name, is useless without teachers dedicated to challenging systemic oppression with intersectional social justice. So part of our work, and I think it is joyful and meaningful when kids feel that they're making a difference in their world. So what I want you all to do, I've talked a little bit about problem-based, and the need for that is foundational. So we're going to move to another piece that we believe is also foundational, but it can't happen if you don't have that problem base in place. We're going to move to essential number 9, which deals with the community piece, right? So one of the essential, not like we should do this if it's because it's cool to do, or we shouldn't do this just because we have a great opportunity. This is essential for secondary learners to be networking with their community. So number 9, essential number 9 explicitly states in all content areas, that is English, social studies, history, and the natural sciences, that community networking to tap into the available funds of knowledge in support of developing students' knowledge and identities. So identities as writers, identities as readers, historians, scientists, mathematicians, right? We cannot do that only in our classroom space. The only way we do that and develop it authentically is when we lock arms, when we partner with the people of our community, the businesses of our community, the social issues that pop up in our community. So that's when that actually comes into play. So what you see on the screen here is the more general idea around the community networking, right? Helping students connect and build on their in-school and out-of-school literacy practices and identities is one big idea. But what I want for us to do is continue to drill down. The last time we were together, we added to the Jamboard. I'm going to see if I can drop this into the chat. So similar to what we did earlier, and I'm not sure if who's ever sharing can move to the Jamboard, but if you can go there. We want you to stop and do a little freedom dreaming of your own, similar to what we did earlier, where we took those emergent strategies, those principles, and we concretized it. We said, we believe this. So what should we do? We want you to also take a look at the essential practice around the community networking. And it starts at frame 6. If you are an English language arts person, you will be writing about ideas as you read this over, like what we're brainstorming here. We're being thought partners together. What could you do based on what you're reading to really bring in the community into your current space, whatever it is, the curriculum that you have, right? What can you do to incorporate this aspect? Because again, the essentials are saying this is essential for us to do as secondary educators. So one of the points that have been lifted on here as an example is if you're an English language arts teacher, a beautiful way to incorporate the community piece is to invite journalists who center underreported stories into your classroom. You have them here in our community, Southeast Michigan. We have access to them through the Pulitzer Center. And so that could be one way. And if you go to frame 7, if you're a math teacher, you'll be writing on frame 7 just ideas about, first you'll read through how your particular subject has been nuanced in this area, right? And then you'll add in ideas that relate to mathematic community networking. So one way to do that would be to use story, but use that story and retell the story through math, statistics, data, infographics, right? So that could be another way to add that community piece and community voice. If you are a social studies teacher, you'll be adding to the Jamboard frame 8. And one example here is oral history. It's such a beautiful, beautiful way to bring the elders, your student's family right into your classroom. And now with technology, Flipgrid and those kinds of things, it's pretty simple to do. That might be an idea, a very concrete way to make this come to life for you. And last but not least, the natural sciences. There's so much there because the Next Generation Science Standards offers up so much for you all. So from our colleague, Rich Bacalor, he has recommended that science teachers lean heavily on those Next Generation Science Standards and science storyline. And so you can click that link there to think about how to bring in additional things around the community. So I've set the stage for you. And what I would love for you to do now is, depending upon your content area, the content area that you're focusing on today, to find your frame, read through. We'll give you some time to do that. And then just go ahead and play around, add ideas. How will you bring this year? Do some freedom dreaming. Don't think about money. Don't think about resources. Think only about what will make your classroom community more inviting and how you can bring in this community piece into your classroom, given your current curriculum. So I'm going to be quiet. Jeff, did you have anything to add to this?
Just that they need access to edit the Jamboard.
Okay, let me see how to fix that.
But yeah, again, don't, with emergent strategy, right? The idea is imagining what's possible, not stopping yourself and just thinking about all the boundaries or all the obstacles that exist. A different world's out there, and we with our students can, I think, really work toward something really beautiful. But it just depends on us being willing to sort of see the future that way. And hopefully, this group, a great group, can do that work.
Perfect. So we'll give you a few minutes to play around there. So we'll take another 30 seconds because I think you'll get some additional ideas that you can continue to add to the Jamboard with the next portion of today's presentation.
Yeah, definitely keep the freedom dreaming coming. Keep that emergent strategy flowing on the Jamboard. We definitely don't want to cut you off, but we definitely have some good stuff lined up here. So one of the things that we wanted to talk to you about as a way to connect number 1 to number 9, or using essential number 1 to get to essential number 9, is place-based learning. The National Council of Teachers of English actually has a position statement on teaching about climate change and climate issues. And they say environmental action and writing are often deeply intertwined, but the connection between them is often overlooked. Building students' critical ecological literacy is key to survival, renewal, and restoration, especially for marginalized communities most impacted by systemic environmental racism, environmental degradation, and climate change. I think that does a great job of helping us set the purpose for how we might use this issue in our classroom to engage students in some solutions-oriented thinking and some collective action around the climate, particularly locally. Because if small is good and small is all, and the large is a reflection of the small, what's happening globally is actually also happening in our communities. And we'll see a quote in a second, but about this. But Dr. Russ Mayo, who writes about eco-composition and ecological literacy, says we don't fight for places we don't love. So helping students to love a place, their place, and thinking about how this is impacting the places they love is a way into having conversations and taking collective action about these issues. And we've had quite a climate summer. As Roz was saying, her and I have worked with teams of students from Detroit and Hamtramck in collaboration with their teachers to develop units of study around issues that they care about and issues that are concerning to their local community. And that they want to investigate more, and they want their peers to know more about, and they want to engage their community in conversations in the backdrop of our work together this summer with our teams. There's been a lot going on climate-wise. We've had the summer of wildfire smoke here in Metro Detroit, and navigating that's been complicated because there's been really no clear directives about how you best navigate that, what the different levels of air quality mean. So people have been kind of left to their own devices. But what this really helped, I think, our students understand that we were working with this summer is what's happening thousands of miles away is actually also directly impacting you. So the local is global and the global is local. And that's kind of accelerating that thought process for them. During our second convening, or right after our second convening, as everybody was leaving the Detroit Historical Museum where we were, everybody got caught in a huge storm. Many of you may have, like Roz and I, may have had your power knocked out. You may have been driving down flooded streets. I certainly was driving down a flooded highway and trying to navigate that. But we've seen a lot of these floods happening locally as well. And again, I've talked about the issues with power and an unreliable electric grid that we're seeing that has just increasing amount of strain on it. And while there was a bunch of bad news, there was also some good news on the climate front. And I think this really inspired students that we were working with, that a group of youth organizers in Montana were able to convince a court that they have a right to clean air, clean water, and a sustainable environment for them to grow up in. And so they were able to secure a landmark court decision in the climate change battle for the future. And so that really motivated students to say, you know what, I have a voice too. There's things that I can do and that we can do together to make our climate future better. And that was really exciting to see, and really important, quite frankly, to the future that we have together. We did want to show you a video. It is about 9 minutes long, but we did, as Roz said, there's always enough time for the right work. This is so powerful. This was in the New York Times. And I want to give a shout out to Jessica Madden, who's an English teacher at Hamtramck High School, for sending us this. She saw it and she's like, we have to use this with the team that we're working with. We love Jessica. And this is about how a real host of issues intersect with water usage, flooding, water access, water quality here locally. And it was put together by Dream Hampton for the New York Times. And she says in the artist's statement about this film is that quiet grief, but also it is small healing. It's a portrait of Detroit, of its abandoned neighborhoods and the canals affected by the climate crisis that are reclaiming the blocks I biked as a child. This is a short film about loss and memory, the flooded Midwestern basements where we collect family ephemera. Basements are, of course, foundations. So much of what makes Detroit special are Black people who are leaving for the suburbs. My city's foundation is disappearing, and if I'm asked to talk about it publicly, I know to rightly invoke decades of neoliberal policies and brutal disinvestment. But when I'm home and moving through spaces that hold my deepest memories, I feel mournful. So we can think about Dream Hampton's statement, but I also want you to think about two other quotes as we're watching this. One is a quote I invoked earlier from Dr. Russ Mayo: "We don't fight for places we don't love." And I want to invoke another quote from a professor of mechanical engineering at U of M, Dr. James Holly Jr., who helped us out in green. He says we need to acknowledge both the beauty and the blight. If we want to confront these issues, we have to love our places, but we also have to acknowledge the flaws and the problems that our places are confronting. So having that dexterity and that flexibility to do both of those things at the same time, to love, but to acknowledge beauty and blight simultaneously, that can be hard. So I think this video is a really good example of both of these quotes: loving your place, but acknowledging its problems. So without any further interruption, I will turn it over to Dream Hampton here, because this video is really beautiful. All right, so again, that's a really great video that is dealing with that dichotomy of beauty and blight and loving the place where you're from, but also acknowledging some of the realities and challenges of that place. I think that's a really great mentor text that we can engage students with. The students that we showed it to this summer really had lots to say about it, and we had lots of rich discussion. And in our remaining time together, I want to talk about a place-based writing process that we, along with Dr. Russ Mayo, walked our students and teachers through. That's a quick way into place-based writing that you might use this year if you choose to go in this direction or do something around place-based activities in your classroom. So it's a really simple process, which is what I really like about it. And it's one of the reasons we used it, because we wanted the process to be clear. So we weren't like weighing people down with a bunch of unnecessary steps, or made it hard to follow so that people felt it was inaccessible. So this was an accessible way into starting to get to that richness. Step one, we asked students to really remember and think about 3 to 5 places that they loved really deeply and that they cared about a lot. And we asked them to jot down words and phrases that were associated with that. So what you're seeing on the screen in terms of the image, we did a little quilt about places that people loved and memories and values that they associated with them. And this was how one of them turned out. So people had a lot of different feelings about a lot of different places, and these feelings were really resonant. So they had really deep connections to the places that they listed, and that they eventually put on this quilt of that we made. Step 2 was then picking one of the places and selecting a memory that was associated with that place. And that really was something defining for them. So we asked them to really think about who was there, when was it, what did you do, and to really live into the sensory details of that memory, because we know that's so powerful, to recall and to remember and to get this down on paper. As Roz was saying earlier, just the act of writing something down is really can be really beautiful and really sparking and really generative. So we were trying to get them to do that. So asking them to dig back into their memory banks and really share. Oh, and the picture there is, as I said, we did some work around land use and how that affected our local climate, including where highways got cited and how they got cited and what the result of that was. And so we were at the Detroit Historical Museum, and these are some teachers and students looking at the Detroit 67 exhibit and thinking about how to work backwards from that in an inquiry frame, all the way back to the siting of highways and housing and how that all played out in our region. And then finally, we asked students and our teachers just to get it down. So writing a kind of free writing a discovery draft and getting poetry and images and paragraphs going. We asked them to write for an extended period of time and just to push through those lulls and those blocks and just keep the pen moving. And really beautiful stuff came out of this, really beautiful stories. We did a gallery walk and people could walk around and listen to others share their stories. As you know, and I know, there's real power in sharing stories and real beauty in the ability to share part of yourself with a willing audience. So we had that, and it was great to see the smiles, the laughs, the tears, as people were sharing memories about the places that really meant a lot to them. So again, we wanted a really simple, accessible process to get students thinking about these places that they love and cared about and wanted to interact with more, and thinking then about how the environment impacted those places that they really cared about. All right. We have some upcoming opportunities for you. We hope our conversation with you doesn't end here, because I think there's a lot more to say and there's a lot more to do together, not only around climate, but around a whole host of issues that impact our local communities and the way we live. So we do have an equity-focused literacy series coming up. Our focus this year is on restorative literacies and how we bring back hope and how we reimagine education to be more humanizing and how we're cultivating students' genius. That's on our equity-focused literacy series. We've got a great lineup again this year. Our first one kicks off next month. Deb Walter is going to come and talk to us about restorative literacies and what that looks like and what that can be. Laura, our colleague Heather Roderman, and I are also running a responsive assessment network that's kicking off also in October. And we're talking about compassionate assessment and feedback practices. So we'd love to have you there. That starts on October 12th. We're excited to welcome David Buck in to talk to us about how he enacts compassionate grading practices. And then finally, we have our equity-based disciplinary literacies network. So if you want to know more about the essentials document that we shared last week and this week, that's a great place to do it and to talk about how to enact it. Also, don't forget that part 3 of this series is coming up next week. We're excited to have you for part 3 or final part. So please definitely register for that at the same place you registered for this. Thanks for being here today. We know that your time, especially this time of year, is valuable. Your time's always valuable. But right now, as you're getting ready for students and preparing your classrooms and getting everything ready to go, we appreciate the opportunity to spend an hour with you. So hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you very much for being here. Have a great day.